making fantasy miniatures, and it's by Tim Swain. It's me. It's sort of a hobby of mine, and I love to do it. It really makes me happy, and it's really calming for me. Something to note is you always want to start with making a concept design. Pretty much what you want to make, you got to figure that out. After that, you want to move on to drafting. Now, pretty much there's a lot of different scales you can go through and you can use. There are small scales for making miniatures, but there's also much larger scales. And it's important to figure that out before you go ahead and you start actually trying to make the miniature. It makes it a little bit harder to work with if you're not really knowing what you're doing. Some of the tools you'll need, you might need a ruler, I have some wax carving tools, some armature wire, which we'll get to later, little sharp pointy tools, little knives, and then that little box up on the right, that's Super Sculpey. That's a type of polymer clay that I use to make them. It's an oven-baked clay, works really well, gets things done. So here I have a miniature, actually, an armature, and you use this by taking some pliers and some of that armature wire and you bend it into the shape of your guy. When you do this, you want to keep in mind the scale that you chose earlier on. The main point you want to focus on with the armature is making it simple, because the more you add, it can make it harder to add the clay. After you get the armature all set up, you want to focus on adding the base, getting something to work with. It makes it easier to work with because then you can add and it'll stay stable. So you want to start building it up, adding, a good amount of clay. Be pretty lenient when you start off adding the clay, because, you can always take more off later. It's not going to be ready to bake until you're finished. So here I have pretty much my first, draft. I got most of the excess clay off. I'm kind of sculpting little eyes and this, that. I got the rough shape of the whole piece. He's got a cape, he's got a sword. It looks okay, but it's got some more refining to be done. So after you do get the final shape, you can see I got some more details on there. You're going to go ahead and put him in the refrigerator. Now the point of this is you're going to try to cool him, because when you bake him, you don't want him to sag or anything like that. So you're going to want to put him into the refrigerator to really cool off. Probably something like 15 minutes-ish, 15-20 minutes. Probably the same amount of time you want to go ahead and preheat your oven. Now based on what clay you use, Super Sculpey, it's preheating at 275, and it bakes for 15 minutes for every 1/4 inch of thickness. And what you want to try to do is you want to make a big open area in the middle of the oven. See how I have the two racks separated? That's going to give you a lot of room to put in the miniature, because on the paper plate, as you can see right here, it's kind of hard to see, but it's in the middle of the oven, and I have the door closed. And you want to make sure you don't open that while it's baking, because it can actually sort of not completely cure the clay, and it won't make it so, crisp like you want it to be. You might lose some of those really defining features of your miniature. After you take it out of the oven, though, you want to go ahead and let it cool down, because it's extremely hot. I mean, it was baking at 275 degrees, and it's going to be very, very warm, and also sort of flexible. So you got to be careful. If you bend it, it will keep that shape after just a few minutes. And the whole point of baking it is to make it nice and hard, so when you go ahead and you're going to be adding your base coat, you want to make sure that it's going to be ready to do that. Your base coat, you can see in the background I have a big old canister or bottle of the base coat paint. And it's just sort of a thick white acrylic-based paint that sort of just covers it all and gives you a nice surface to start adding other colors. With this, you really want to be lenient. You want to just put on enough. You want to make sure you cover it all the way. But you don't want to cover up all the details. You can see up in the top left, I got his pauldron, and you want to make sure you can keep all those little details, because obviously you spent some time making them. You want to make sure that you're not going to be missing out on them, and make sure also when you're doing this that you get all the sides of it. Now, when you're painting him, you're not just going to want to throw on the acrylic paint like you did with the base coat, but actually you're going to be mixing it with a little bit of water. For most of your paints, you're only going to mix it about 1 part water, 1 part paint. You can see here I'm kind of dragging it in just to show you exactly how much water. I'm not going to be using all the water that I have there, but I'm going to be using a good amount. And then you just want to kind of lightly touch it. It's going to be a very light coating, and you're going to let that dry. You're going to paint it again, let it dry. And you're going to start with all your brighter colors, your yellows, your whites, your tans, your really light greens and light blues, because it's easier to start light and then add darker colors later on, because if you start dark, it can be very difficult. Eventually, though, after you get a lot of your lighter colors in, like your yellows and your tans, like I said, you want to try to work on those darker colors, and be very, very careful when you do this, because when you add the dark colors, they can completely cloud your light colors and make them look like crap. And with this thick of paint and this dark color, it's going to be hard to come back from it. You're going to need a lot of paint. Now, next, after you get done painting it the way you want it, you're going to head and you're going to make a wash. And this is just using some black paint, a little bit, with a lot of water. And you can see here I have a real lot of water when I'm doing this. And you just want to make it so it's a very, very thin amount of paint. And you're going to really just make a wicked thin layer of paint. And you're just going to kind of drizzle it in different key spots. You can see how it sort of collects in the little corners and crevices, and it kind of adds almost like a little bit of a shadow. It adds a little bit of definition to the miniature that you can't get otherwise, which is really nice. It really adds a nice piece to the miniature. And sort of it gives you that feeling of, yeah, it's nice and calming, and it's something that's very peaceful. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to do some highlighting with some white dry brushing. Notice I have a very little bit amount of paint on that, and I'm just going to kind of bring it across, rake it across the surface of different parts, just to give it that little touch of highlight. And the reason I do miniatures is because I really love it. It's one of those things where I think that everybody could do more of and be it's peaceful. It's kind of like writing or drawing. It's nice. After you get done really painting that, you add your highlights and your washes, you're going to want to go ahead and take some more white, and you're going to clean it up. Mostly the base, because a lot of that wash can get kind of caught up in the bottom of the miniature after it drips down. But I find that after I do these for a long time, I really get a good sense of how much I love this. So here you go. This is the completed project right here. It's a pretty nice miniature. You can see it's very nice. It's got some good tones to it. And it's just something I love to do, and I think if more people did it, they'd be much happier with their life. Thank you for watching.